Hi, I'm Nigel. Welcome to today's video. So we're going to look at the oil filler cap of these. This is a 1997 Bentley Turbo R, but this is the same for many of the SZ models. I'm making these for over 10 years. This is 1997, but this will cover you from way back in about 1986, 87 time as well. So the problem we have is under the oil filler cap we have something that looks a bit like this, and I'll show you inside the engine in just a minute. What happens is that this is actually a piece of cork. This is what sits over the engine on the oil filler cap, and the inside part pops out. You've got a little metal piece here, like a little washer, which is pushed into this, which on the outside looks like a rusty piece of metal, but actually it's a piece of cork. So on the inside you can see, actually there you see the cork. That's what it looks like from underside of on the underside of the filler cap. Looks like the rusty metal, but it's not, it's cork. So what happens is that metal part gets pushed all the way through, and that becomes very loose. So what happens is you open the filler cap and this stays on top of the engine. You then have to remove this, do whatever you're doing, or look inside the engine, and then put this down, and then put the filler cap down, which is not how it's supposed to be. Here's the metal plate that sits on it. Let's have a look at the engine and I'll show you how it's supposed to go back together. So here we are at the engine, and over here is this great aluminium engine oil filler cap. Absolutely solid, like something from an aircraft. And normally it's clipped down like this. You flick this big metal switch and this will normally pop up. The spring's off at the moment, which is why it doesn't pop up. When you open it, I've already taken this part out, but what I had before was this cork part which sits under here. It's actually this way around, like this, and that's the bit that was left behind. So on the underside of here was the spring. This is the spring, which was this way around. This puts the pressure onto the cork seals this, but as you can see it's just punched straight through. The reason being is that between the cork and the big spring here is this metal piece, like a huge washer with a little rim around the edge. But this circle is bigger than the metal, so all it does is, over time, this car's 20 years old and this is probably the original piece, it just pushes straight through and this pops through the hole, and therefore it's no longer pushing. So the Bentley drawing you want, and this is applicable to Rolls-Royces as well, is this one. So there's the oil filler, and you can see the breakdown of parts here. The part that we're looking at is this piece here, which is called an RE, Romeo Echo 15879. And either side of it, you've got this big spring spider part that we just saw. Under that we've got this small part, which is a UE32692. Then we've got the metal plate. Then we've got the cork. And again, another one of these UE32692, which I'll show you in a second. Same part. Then a washer, then a nut, and a little split pin. So that's all it is. So let's try and put it back together. I bought a new cork piece. It was £13, so it's not too expensive. But we now just need to assemble them again. Before we put this together, I'm going to show you at the side there. What you can probably see here is that there's a small hole right at the end, and that's where the split pin's going to go. So we're going to put this all together now, and that's where the split pin's going to go through to hold the whole lot together. Now we're going to reassemble it now. So the first thing we need is this spring part. Before I do that though, what I don't want is losing some of these small bits down there. So I'm just going to get some kitchen towel, and use paper or whatever you want to use to make sure that's really filled in. You do not want to be dropping things down there, that will be pretty bad. So now we start putting things together. So the first thing is the spider. This wants to be pushing down. These little legs at the end are what's pushing down on the outside of the cap. So that's going to be pushing down like this. You can see it fits neatly over there, so let's put that on. The next thing we want is one of these two pieces, and these two pieces, which was number UE32692, that's what these are. You want one of them, exactly the same, but the flap piece. There's a flat side and there's the side with a recess. We want the flat side on the underside here. The next piece we're going to put along is this big metal part with the lip on it. So again, that's got the lip side and the flat side, and the way we do that is with the lip side upwards. So this flat face is what's going to have the cork on it, and this side is what sits inside these legs of the spider. So as I'm pushing there, you can see now that sits on the spider, and that flat side, the nice clean flat side, is ready to take the cork. Now what I've done, this has got slightly misshapen, so it becomes slightly off center, and this was, when I say off center, I mean it was raised on one side, so it was more of a sort of V shape rather than being flat, and the V shape wasn't identical, it was more on one side. So I flattened it out a bit. I've made sure this is nice and removed any burrs or sharp edges, because that's what's going to be pushing against this cork, and I don't want it to punch through again. So that's what I've done with that piece. Next comes the cork. So here's our cork piece, brand new piece, and you can see it's slightly different to the one that came off in terms of, the cork's the same, but the pressing here is slightly different to the one that I took off. What is the same though is that there's a slightly smaller side and a slightly bigger side. Slightly different on both, but just the way it is made. So the way I'm going to put this on is to put the slightly bigger side pushing upwards and the slightly smaller side where the nut is going to go facing downwards. So we then put that, it just sits on there. That's followed by the second washer. Again, this time the flat side is going to be facing down, and this inside bit is what goes in and sits around that sort of copper insert in the middle of the cork there, like that. Then this is where we don't want to lose our small pieces. Next is the little spring washer, sorry, just a normal washer. Then we've got this nut, and that nut has got slots in it. That's for the split pin, which we'll put in a minute, and this is what's going to hold it all together. So if I can squeeze it together and make sure I don't drop that, because that is a very small piece, make sure that's all, there we are, neatly together, and then I can just start doing that up. It doesn't have to be too tight, you'll feel it when it grips. That's the end of it there, so that's gripped. Now before I put the split pin in, I'm going to just check it. And let's press the button. Look at that, fantastic. So that spring's doing its job. This is sitting in neatly, and that's nice and tight. What we now need to do is get that split pin in, and somewhere there is a little gap, which I believe is on the side. So what I need to do is probably get a torch and make sure I can just find it, and then I'm going to put the split pin in. So I'll just go and grab the torch, and we'll see if we can find the hole ready for the split. So I've just got the split pin in. You can see it comes in sideways like that. This is done up not too tight, just fairly tight, but it's enough. Push that all the way in, and then all we want to do is bend these legs around. So if I can get hold of these, one leg will be longer than the other. You do the longest leg first, and what I want to do is twist one around one way, make sure that's all the way in, around that way, and the other one, the shorter one, goes around. This is really a little bit tricky. That's fine, there we go, all the way around. Goes around the other way. We can then remove all our tools. That's not going anywhere. And there we have it. One piece of cork replaced in the engine oil filler cap of a Bentley Turbo R from 1997.